For the longest time when I was a coin collector, I always used to snub people who liked tone coins. I never thought that there was much of a reason for it. In fact, it looked like people were kind of buying into the hype at the expense of the coins themselves. It never really made sense to me. Then about, 15, 18 years ago, it slowly started dawning on me that toning on coins can have so many different positive attributes that it turns out that a lot of my core collection now is made up of toned pieces. We'll be taking a look at some of them here today. So that's what this video is going to be about. In fact, this is going to be a two-part series about coin toning. We'll also touch a little bit on bullion toning since it kind of fits hand in hand with it. If you are new to the channel, I want to thank you for being with me here today. My name is Dubc. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click on the subscription button down below. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. It's just a way of showing support for the channel. And for all you subscribers out there, thank you guys as always for being with me here again today. I try to premiere new videos every Friday evening, and I'm usually there to answer questions and talk with you during the premiere. Sometimes we even go live immediately after the premiere. So if you're not here on a Friday night, pencil it into your calendar. Hopefully you can be with me on the next video when we premiere it. If you're new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I also like to begin my videos with a couple of definitions that we can kind of work back into the subject matter. I'm going to hit you with several of them as we go through the beautiful examples that you see here. But I thought we should probably start with a little bit of basics, lay some groundwork so we're all on the same page. What is toning? I want to give a quick shout out to subscriber Kevin Russell 5597. Actually suggested this back in October. I began working on this video series about 8-10 months ago. But his request for this information kind of put a boot in my butt, so I wanted to give him a shout out for at least getting me back on track with making this video series once again. What is toning? Toning is when the environment, and we often think about the environment in terms of gases, oxygen, sulfur, oxide, those kinds of things, reacting with the surface of a coin, resulting in a color on the coin that was not present when the coin was minted. So that's kind of the scientific, at least kind of the more technical aspect of it. Toning can appear on copper and nickel. In fact, there are some beautiful examples out there. And sometimes on gold. It seems to be quite specific on gold, and we'll take a look at some of the examples here a little bit later. But it is primarily seen on silver pieces, and that's the majority of the pieces that we're going to be looking at here also. Note that I use the word environment and not atmosphere, and that's because coin's environment can include things like holders or coin folders, cases, and sometimes even slabs. We'll see an example of that later. Toning can be seen as a positive or a negative. And that's a really important thing to remember while you're thinking about these terms. It is completely subjective. It really depends on what you like and what you don't like. Now, that may not necessarily be what the market wants to see, but when it comes to your own personal preferences, as you guys know, I'm fond of saying that a journey into precious metals and rare coins is a really personal one. So a lot of this kind of depends on how you see it. And believe me, you're going to see some examples here today that are really, really cool, and you'll see some examples that maybe not so much. And I'd like to have you comment down below if you see something that is really interesting to you, or if you see something that you just look at and hold your nose up to. And I encourage everybody to go through the comments and look and see what the opinions are of other folks who are watching this video. I think that's going to be kind of a fun thing to do, an important thing to do. Generally speaking, however, dark brown or black toning is not considered attractive. Sometimes we would call that spotty toning. We would call that mottled toning. And it really seems to be kind of that black splotchy tone. And we've got an example we'll show you a little bit later. So splotchy and mottled toning or dark toning is considered usually unattractive. Again, if it's something that you like, it's something that you like. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, generally speaking, rainbow toning or pretty or unusual toning, as long as it's on the coin in the right place, can be attractive also. Personally, I find that if the toning kind of complements the subject matter, that's when you've really got something special. And that's what I really like to see. I think that's when it's at its best. So that's kind of the groundwork of toning, what we're going to be talking about here. The other definition I wanted to throw at you is maybe not so complicated. That is a term that we hear often in the coin business. It used to be popular 10, 15 years ago. You don't hear it quite as often anymore. And that's the expression making a coin. That term has always had a really high cringe factor for me personally, and I honestly don't use it very often, but it's when you acquire an uncertified coin or a coin that is certified already that you maybe think has a chance to certify at a higher grade. You either send that raw coin into a third-party grader, or you crack that coin out of a slab, a holder like one of these that you see here, and send it into a third-party grader. And if the coin comes back with a higher grade, whether it was a raw piece to begin with or a slabbed piece, then that coin is considered something that you made. You made the coin at an MS-65. Like I said, it's a little bit cringe, but we're going to talk about one example here, and it's kind of almost a shorthand. You know, a lot of phrases that we see in any field are really designed to kind of cut out a lot of words that aren't necessary. I know Dub C could use a little bit of lessons in that kind of area, right? The truth is that if you're just telling another dealer or another collector that you made the coin, it just means that you probably picked it up raw, realized that there was some potential for it, sent it into a third-party grader. The third-party grader not only agreed that the coin was authentic and that it warranted a high grade, but then actually returned that coin with a high grade. It's just a shorthand way of saying all of that without having to say all of that. It's just called making a coin. I know, a little bit cringy, but that's the truth, right? That's the other term I wanted to talk about. So we can't really discuss toning on coins without discussing the difference between naturally and unnaturally toned coins. We would call that artificially toned, and this will be the last little group of terms that I discuss here before we take a deep dive. I promise we're going to dive into these beautiful coins. Natural toning is often seen as the general slow transfer of colors across the surface of a coin over a long period of time. Now, I'm going to speak in a little bit in generalizations here. You can't use these for everything when it comes to NT, naturally toned, or AT, artificially toned coins. But these are general ideas, right? This is usually what we see. Naturally toned is often subtle, but it doesn't have to be. There can be explosive colors on naturally toned coins. We see that a lot in the Morgan Dollar series. APMEX, the bullion retailer, actually calls artificially toned coins crayon colors. We'll talk about that in just a second, but you can have those colors on a naturally toned coin. Natural toning generally takes a long time. We're talking years and sometimes even decades or longer for that toning to appear. This is the natural interaction with the environment, right? This is something that usually happens over a long period of time. And it's often unintentional, right? This is just a coin that was a coin. It was just stored, whether well or poorly, and over a long period of time, the surface color of the coin changes. So it's not something that was done intentionally. Nobody was trying to do this. Again, there are some exceptions, but that is really kind of the definition of natural toning. Sometimes the colors seem to go deeper into the surface of the coin. Sometimes the colors often flow into each other in almost the prism-like spectrum, but not always, and that's the important distinction. These are generalizations. They aren't necessarily hard and cold facts or truths. Artificially toned, sometimes called AT, and I'll probably refer to it as AT in this video series, often looking at very bright colors, right? Blue tends to be a little bit suspect when we're talking about toning. Not always, but often you don't see real brilliant blue in toning. Again, there's that crayon colors that APMEX used. Generally, it happens, artificially toned pieces generally happens very quickly. This is something that is induced. Often people use chemicals to change the colors of coins. You can use chemicals like copper sulfate, and it imparts a very brilliant color scheme on certain coins. but this is one of the most commonly used techniques, and most of the qualified third-party graders know exactly what to look for when it comes to these types of artificial toning. It is intentional, it happens quickly, it's usually the result of chemicals. It is, instead of being subtle, it is often harsh. Again, I know a lot of these are generalizations, and you're going to see some exceptions here in the pieces that I'm talking about, but that's kind of the difference between the two. What does it matter to you as a collector or a stacker? A naturally toned coin that is seen as beautiful by the person who is going to be buying it, you can add a huge premium. Sometimes coins are incredibly scarce with natural toning. And if you've got an example that has beautiful, and you, again, this is a subjective thing, but most people can kind of tell when something is attractive, you can, set your own price. Somebody out there will pay for it. If you've got something that is artificially toned, you may think that that is a beautiful looking coin, in much the same way that you may think that a highly polished coin is a beautiful coin. But the market in general does not want artificially toned coins, and they will discount an artificially toned coin to the point that it's actually seen as a damaged coin. So these are important concepts to keep in mind. Your experience may be different, your opinions may be different. I'm kind of telling you what the market sees when they see toned coins. So we're going to talk about many different types of coins. I've got some examples of some. I'll show you some images of those that I don't have. And that will go through a big chunk of the rest of this video. And then in the next video in the series, we'll pick up and we'll continue to talk about all the different types of toning that is out there, again, with some really cool examples to look at. And then we'll kind of wrap it up with some thoughts and maybe a little bit of advice, and also some extra hints when it comes to things like storing these pieces, because they do warrant often having maybe a slightly higher degree of storage so that you can keep your beautiful toned pieces toned without them becoming what we call terminal. And we'll touch on that a little bit later also. So we've talked about what is toning. We talked about natural toning. We've talked about artificial toning. How about types of toning? It's important to realize that when we're talking about all the various types of toning that you're going to be seeing here, you can often see these blend into each other. So there's no hard and fast rule, right? If somebody says this piece is rim toned and somebody else says it's tab toned, it could be both, right? Or if somebody says it's rainbow toned or textile toned, it could be a combination of all of those things. So I'm going to give you some kind of generalizations, again, what we're talking about with the various types of toning. And we're going to start with some things that I don't usually see as being toned, but truly they are. And the people who collect these series would definitely see them as being toned. So we'll start with copper. That's what we're looking up here at the upper left-hand side. Copper, when it comes out of the mint, is often what we call red, and it's almost this brilliant red-orange color. This is a 1964 20 centavos from Mexico. A beautiful, brilliant, flashy cartwheel luster red coin. So if you're looking at a slab, if you're looking at a coin catalog, this would be considered by most people a red coin. That is the term that's given to these brilliant, flashy red copper coins. So red is a tone. It is the natural tone of copper coins most of the time when they are minted. But there is kind of a spectrum that copper coins fall on. The next level, I hate to use the word down, but it's probably true when it comes to evaluating the price of a copper coin. Red is often seen as the best. And then the middle would be what you see here. This is an example of an RB coin. That stands for red-brown. When the coin starts to oxidize a little bit, copper in particular, starts to pick up a brown color rather than a red color. I happen to think that PCGS was a little bit harsh with the grading on this. I have seen pieces that are this color that would sometimes be considered red, but I'm comfortable calling this an RB coin. So this is a coin that has those attributes of being kind of a flashy red, but you're starting to see some brown creep into it. So that would be an RB or a red-brown coin. And then finally, I've got some examples of these Cuauhtémoc 50 centavo pieces. These are a little bit earlier, 1957. This is a copper coin that when it was first minted, likely looked a lot like the one here on the left in terms of its color, but you can see that this one on the right has oxidized almost completely to the point where this would be considered a brown copper coin. So we've gone through the continuum there of red, red-brown to brown. You kind of get the idea. This is really not so much a tone as the way that the coin rolled off the assembly plant or the assembly line at the mint. This is a little bit more tone because it's that oxidation, right? It's that interaction with the environment that's bringing this tone down a little bit on its path probably to becoming more brown. And then you've got the example here of these two very, very brown 50 centavo pieces. You can see the continuum of red, red-brown to brown. So that's copper. Copper can tone in other colors also, but I don't want to really spend a ton of time talking about copper because we've got so much silver to talk about here, and that's really going to be the bulk of this video series. The next one is gold. And gold, believe it or not, does actually tone. I've got some gold coins that have some beautiful full colors on them as well. We'll talk about those in a later video. We've actually talked about them a little bit in the past too. But one of the most commonly encountered tone of gold is what we call tobacco toning. Now, some people say that tobacco toning is really an artificial tone that was imparted on the coin surface from heavy smoking around the coins. That can be something that happens to this day, or it can be something that happened a long time ago. The best examples are early branch mint gold pieces that were supposedly kept in tobacco pouches. These are leather pouches. So the tobacco and the leather imparts kind of a golden brown color on some pieces. And it can be phenomenal. The effect when it works well is really exceptional. I've got some examples, maybe not quite as wonderful as early branch mint gold, but you'll definitely be able to see the examples here and see what it is that I'm talking about. This is a 1993 Madison $5 gold piece, so this is a modern gold commemorative. And if you're looking at it in this holder, you're probably not noticing very much. It's really when you compare this piece to a non-toned coin that you can really pick it up. Now, I should say that we've talked a little bit about the environment impacting coins, and there are some people who feel that these OGH holders from PCGS, that's original green holder or older green holder OGH, imparts a very specific tone primarily to gold pieces. And if you wanted proof of that, or at least a suggestion of that, this is definitely it, because this is an uncirculated, this is an MS-70 1993 Madison gold $5 commemorative, and this is a 1993 Madison $5 gold commemorative, also in uncirculated. And you can start to pick up the difference. Unfortunately, I found that the difference on film or on camera is not nearly as dramatic as it is in hand, but you can at least kind of pick that out right. This one here on the left has this beautiful orange-brown, kind of honey brown, honey golden color, while the one here on the right is what these pieces generally look like. It's just that straw gold. Remember that American gold coins often have some silver in them too. So you're looking at the difference that maybe the environment in the form of the slab has on the tone of certain gold coins. I've got one more example here that's pretty illustrative, and I think this is kind of a neat one. This is an American Gold Eagle quarter ounce, right? This is the typical quarter ounce $5 gold piece. I think these are right. $5, is that right? $10, I'm sorry. So this is the $10 gold piece, and this is a slabbed version of the same. So you can see the difference, again, with the tone of the piece on the left versus the one on the right. And again, in video, it's hard to really make out, but this one on the left is just this booming, almost orange mandarin colored gold as compared to the straw color that we saw earlier with that other Madison piece. So gold pieces do tone. It's not very common, especially not common on modern pieces. That really seems to be something that we don't see as often. But look for those tobacco toned, those beautiful kind of rich, deep, dark brown tone. It sometimes tends to be on the rims of these tobacco toned coins. We don't know if this is really the case, but it definitely sounds like a good story. Was it people smoking around them? Was it people smoking pipes? Was it them smoking tobacco in the form of cigars or cigarettes? Or was it being stored in these leather pouches that had been tanned with what other chemicals over time would impart these dark brown colors? We don't really know. There's some anecdotal evidence to suggest that when you find these gold coins, sometimes in these pouches, they do have this tone. And the third-party graders often, not always, but often will recognize it as being legitimate natural tone. We'll talk about the authenticity of toning a little bit later in this video series as well. So getting these things out of the way, we've got different colors for copper, different tone. We've got some different tone for gold as well. But really what we're all here for is the silver, because silver really seems to be the pieces that pick up the most toning. So let's talk about some of the different styles of toning that you see. And this can apply to any type of coin, copper, gold, or silver. But we're going to be looking primarily again at the silver pieces here. Let's start off with the idea of tab toning. You're looking at an example of a tab tone coin, and what this usually represents is the coin that has been in a folder or a holder. And we see this often in commemoratives, especially the early commemorative series from the United States, the 1920s, 1930s, up to the 1950s. These pieces were issued often in cardboard holders, or else they were placed very soon after they were issued into the kind of binders or folders or holders that had little tabs on them. And a lot of the things that we see when it comes to toning has to do with not just the interaction of these pieces with their environment, but the blocking of the interaction of these pieces. And we'll see that in the next example also. So what you're seeing here is a tab that was pressed up against the surface of the coin that allows either the surface to tone and not the area under the tab, or in some cases, the tab itself to tone the coin and not the areas around the tab. That's called tab toning. And a lot of people think it's very attractive, but once again, it really is subjective. You have to decide that you like it, and you can appreciate some of the qualities of toning if that's something that you really want to pursue. So that's tab toning. The next type of toning is called crescent toning. And crescent toning is what I was talking about earlier, when you've got another coin that kind of hid the surface of a coin, and by so doing, it allowed the area that wasn't covered to interact with its environment. And I've got a really cool example here. I talked about this piece briefly on another video not too long ago. This is not a coin. This is a round. This is a privately made silver round. I know it looks a lot like a peace dollar, but there's no date down here. And we'll flip it over and you can see. This is the beautiful rainbow toning that really attracted me to this piece, and I promised that I would tell a story about this piece really briefly. Somebody was hired to clear out an old single-wide trailer way back in the woods on a farmer's piece of property. He had had a relative living there for a long time. The relative had either moved on or passed away, and he just wanted to get rid of it. So he hired this guy to come in with a skid steer and essentially break it up, and was going to get paid $500 for the effort, plus being able to keep all of the metal that was included in it. And at the last second, the farmer kind of backed out and said, "You can have the metal contained within, but I'm not going to pay you anything extra for this piece." And the guy that did this, who brought these into the coin shop, said that on the second day of doing this, his skid steer hit the roof and down came a huge shower of these beautiful silver coins. In fact, there was something like 100, 150 of these hidden in the lining of the single wide trailer. The farmer had told the guy that he could have all the metal contained within, so that's exactly what he did. He kept his mouth shut, took these to my dealer, one of my local dealers, and sold them. Not all of them had this toning, and this is crescent toning. You can see it goes around the outside. But this is a beautiful coin. Look at that tone. You can see the oranges and the reds and the blues. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, how these kind of fade into each other. This is an unusually beautiful toned silver round, and you do find silver rounds that tone. They are as likely to tone as any coin also. But what I was talking about with tab, or with the toning on this piece, is that there was likely another coin that was laying against it like that was stopping the environment from reacting to the rest of it, while the exposed area was able to tone that beautiful color. And this is one of my favorite toned pieces. Unfortunately, it's just on a round. What do you do? Sometimes you don't get them on the really fantastic pieces. So that's an example of crescent toning, right? Just a little bit around the edge of the piece. It actually is really cool when you've got brilliant contrast like this one, with the brilliant white style of the center of the coin contrasting really well with that brilliant colored tone all across that crescent. It's exciting. This is a fun thing to look at. So there's no reason why I wouldn't have picked that up for the cost of silver back then. And I'm really glad I've got that example to share with you. So that's the example of crescent toning. Bullseye toning. This is something that can be difficult to explain to somebody who hasn't seen it. I'll show you a picture of bullseye. And this is often kind of looks like a dartboard almost, right? You've got these gradients from the outside of the coin going in, and it can be a really beautiful effect. It also is one of the easiest things to mimic if somebody's trying to AT a coin. So I would give you at least a little bit of caution about these types of pieces. I don't really have something that is bullseye toning, but I've got something that is not too dissimilar from it. You might call this piece tab toned, and you might also call this piece a little bit of rim toning. This is not considered a really high quality grader by a lot of people in the coin field. And I did not buy this coin, this Morgan, this 1880S as an MS65. But if you can see the difference, I'm sorry, my glare there, that shocking gold against the brilliant bright white of the coin itself. This is another example that you might call tab toning, you might call bullseye toning, you might call rim toning. There's that whole idea that some types of toning can blend into other types, so it doesn't have to be hard and fast. It's whatever you want to describe it as. Now, some folks think that these early green PCI holders often impart this golden color around Morgan dollars in particular. Isn't that strange how certain types of holders impact certain types of coins? But we saw that with the OGH holders from PCGS. It doesn't happen every time, but it happens often enough that it kind of becomes a thing. I didn't pay very much for this piece. The question is whether or not one of the reputable third-party graders would continue to grade that piece, if they would accept it as a MS62, MS63 Morgan, or if they would say that this is an environmentally impaired coin. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And lastly, I wanted to give you an idea of some more of this rim toning when it's not quite as obvious. So this is a 1901 Pan American Exposition medal. You guys may have seen this before. I've talked about these to a large extent, and I've actually put out a website specific to these. But you can see around the outside of the coin, all the way around here, there is some of this beautiful purple fading into violet color. I know my glare is driving me crazy, but you can see purple, gold, and violet just around the outside rim of the coin. Mostly in the center of the coin, it's left without the tone, but man, you've really got some beautiful tone here that you can make out. And again, sorry for the glare. It's not quite as vivid on the backs of the piece or the front, depending on how you see it, but you can definitely make out some of this kind of rainbow, and it seems to be largely devoid in the middle of the coin. So again, you could call this rainbow toning, you could call this tab toning, you could call this rim toning. It doesn't have to be hard and fast. It's however you want to describe it, but this is one of the most beautifully toned examples of this series, and I kind of know a little bit about this series. I'll put the link to that website down below if you have any interest. So we've talked about now all the different types of toning from the copper to the gold to these few examples here. But rather than spend a couple of hours talking about this in one video, we're going to break this up into two. So in part 2, we'll talk about textile toning. We'll talk about rainbow tone. We'll talk about complete or nearly complete toning. We'll talk about confetti toning, and we'll talk about some crazy or wild toning. And I've got a really, really exciting example of that also. And then we get a little bit further deeper into it again. We'll talk about some of my thoughts on it, some advice that I can give you if this is something you want to pursue. We'll talk about how to protect your tone coins in the best way that I know how to protect them. And we'll wrap it up with a really important hint that people have died for when it comes to buying toned coins. I'm going to share it with you. Hopefully, I'll earn your subscription by sharing that with you. If you have questions about any of the pieces we've talked about so far in this series, I encourage you to leave it down below. Again, if there's something that you saw that spoke to you, something that you liked, something that you did not like, leave that comment down below. I'd like to encourage everybody to read through the comments, leave comments. Let's keep this discussion going. This is a really cool discussion. If you have questions or thoughts about another video series or video that you'd like me to make, leave that comment down below also. I would love to make a video for you and give you a shout out like I did to Kevin Russell, who again suggested this video. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, there's your chance again. Go ahead and click on that subscription button. Always be learning And as always, thank you guys for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.